Good morning, sir. Can you see and hear me?
When I unmute myself, I can confirm both.
Thank you very much, sir. This morning we're going to hear from Mr. Jan Holmes, who is appearing remotely from abroad.
Yeah.
Can Mr. Holmes be sworn, please?
Good morning, Mr. Holmes. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Yes, I'm the usher. I'll be taking you through the oath this morning. Have you got a Bible there?
No?
Ah, right. Well, I'm going to have to take you through the affirmation then if you don't have a Bible.
Yeah, that's fine.
If you'd like to repeat after me, I do solemnly,
I do solemnly,
sincerely and truly
sincerely and truly
declare and affirm
declare and affirm
that the evidence I shall give
the evidence I shall give
shall be the truth,
shall be the truth,
the whole truth,
the whole truth,
and nothing but the truth.
and nothing but the truth.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Can you give your full name, please?
Yes, it's Jan Robert Holmes.
Thank you, Mr. Holmes. Thank you very much also for returning today. You appeared during our Phase 2 of this inquiry, and you gave a witness statement in Phase 2. I'm not going to bring it up on screen, but for the transcript, it's WITN 046000100. You have since then produced two further statements, and I'm just going to take you to those. The first of them is dated the 27th of January 2023. Do you have a copy of that in front of you?
Yeah, it's on my screen.
Thank you. For the purpose of the transcript, it's WITN 046000200. If I could ask you to turn to the final page, page 8.
Yeah.
Is that your signature?
Yes, it is.
And is that statement true to the best of your knowledge and belief?
Yes, it is.
And then there is another statement, a third statement, dated the 16th of May 2023. That is WITN 0400300. Could I ask you to turn to the final page of that statement, please?
Yep.
That's page 14. Is that your signature at the end?
Yes, it is.
And is that statement true to the best of your knowledge and belief?
Yes, it is.
Thank you. Mr. Holmes, when you appeared in Phase 2, we went through your career history, so I'm not going to repeat that, save to say that you were the audit manager at ICL from 1997. There was a brief period where you went out of that role in 2000, 2001, but you returned in 2001, and I think you stayed at ICL until 2008. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Thank you. I'm going to begin with a whistle-stop tour of some of the documents that we looked at in Phase 2, just to refresh your memory of some early incidents relating to Horizon. Can we start by looking at FUJ 000-80690? This is a document that will be familiar to many people in this room. It's the report of the EPOS Pinnacle Task Force of autumn 90, which took place in autumn 1998. I think you'll recall that in the top right-hand corner, it seems as though you refreshed your memory in some way, or had cause to look at the document in May 2001 as well. And that's a document that you wrote. If we scroll down, we can see your name there.
With David MacDonald as well.
With David MacDonald, absolutely. And let's look at page 7 of that report. As I say, the contents will be familiar, so we won't stay on this document for a long time, but let's just have a look at the first paragraph. It says there in the report, it's clear that senior members of the task force are extremely concerned about the quality of code in the EPOS product. Earlier this year, the EPOS code was re-engineered by Isha, and the expectation is that the work carried out in Boston was to a high standard and of good quality. Since then, many hundreds of Pinnacle fixes have been applied to the code, and the fear is that code decay will, assuming it hasn't already, cause the product to become unstable. This presents a situation where there's no guarantee that a Pinnacle fix or additional functionality can be made without adversely affect another part of the system. And then it goes on to say, A more worrying concern from the programme's perspective should be reliance on the EPOS product for its current state as a basis for planning and delivery. If we scroll down to the next paragraph, it says their lack of code reviews in the development and fix process has resulted in poor workmanship and bad code. If we go on to page 17, there is a section that I think was written significantly by Mr. McDonnell. If we scroll down, it's a section on existing code. Just to refresh your memory, it says there, although parts of the EPOS code are well written, significant sections are a combination of poor technical design, bad programming, and ill thought out bug fixes. If we scroll over the page, you'll remember those comments. Whoever wrote this code clearly has no understanding of elementary mathematics or the most basic rules of programming. Mr. McDonnell's subsequent evidence to the inquiry was that the EPOS development team was, in his words, like the Wild West, and was the joke of the building. I can't recall, did you see Mr. McDonnell's evidence on that?
Yes, I did.
Yes. Another document that I will refresh your memory with is the CSR Plus Development Audit document. That's FUJ 000-79782. This is now in October 1999, and if we scroll down, we can see that that again is a document written by yourself.
Yep.
Can we turn to page 19 of that document, please? And there's a section there on the electronic point of sale service, the EPOS. If we scroll over the page, just going to read that top part. It says, the figures indicate that the problems facing EPOS during the task force period have not diminished. So we're now in late 1999. Of greater concern are the non-EPOS pinnacles within the group, suggesting that there are still serious quality problems in this vital customer-facing element of the system. The EPOS Solutions Report made specific recommendations to consider the redesign and rewrite of EPOS in part or in whole to address the then known shortcomings. In light of the continued evidence of poor product quality, these recommendations should be reconsidered. And then you'll remember I took you on the last occasion to WITN 04600104. That's the schedule of corrective actions. We're now in May 2000. And if we look at page 9, it addresses the recommendation to redesign and rewrite the EPOS system. And if we scroll over the page to page 10, you'll recall that entry on the 10th of May 2000, which says, as discussed, this should be closed. Effectively, as a management team, we've accepted the ongoing cost of maintenance rather than the cost of a rewrite. Rewrite to the product will only be considered if we need to reopen the code to introduce significant changes in functionality. We'll continue to monitor the code quality based on product defects as we progress through the final passes of testing and the introduction of the modified CI4 code set into live usage in the network. PJ, can we make sure that it's specifically covered in our reviews of the B&TC test cycles? And that recommendation was closed. Thank you, that can come down. So to just recap the developments over that period, we have the Pinnacle Task Force document, of which you were the author in 1998, the CSR development audit, of which you were the author in 1999, and the schedule of corrective actions, where you are involved in that process, and I think you were the author of that document in May 2000. Is that right?
That's correct. Yeah.
Now, we're looking today at the Cleveland's case. In February of 2000, so in between the CSR Plus audit and the closing of that recommendation, Horizon was installed in the post office of Mrs. Julie Wolstenholme, and her contract was terminated in December of that year, still in 2000. looking at the documents that you've just seen, it's fair, isn't it, to say that you were aware of at least fairly notable issues with at least some important part of the Horizon system that affected things like balancing in the period leading up to and including Mrs. Wolstenholme's brief period as a sub-postmistress.
Well, yeah, I mean, the dates would suggest that, but the linkage between the two is not something that I would have made. And also, just to say that the numbers of defects that I'm reporting in the CSR audit report are simply numbers. They're not an analysis of what those defects were. So I can't say what areas of EPOS were actually affected by those bugs.
But you have been told by, for example, Mr. McDonnell that the code is of poor quality.
Oh, yeah.
And I think there was also reference to code decay and things like that with Pinnacle fixes.
Well, in that context, what I was meaning was that the more you tinker with something, the more likely you are to introduce a problem. And that's the same with anything, whether it's software, a car, decorating. You know, if you fiddle about with stuff, it's likely to start going wrong. You know, which is the do it right first time principle. So yeah, that was a concern, but that was, if you like, trying to raise a risk in people's minds that this could happen if we carried on working in that manner.
Absolutely. So you were aware that there were imperfections in the system and that they were attempts to fix those imperfections, but attempts to fix the imperfections themselves could cause other problems.
Well, yes, that essentially is what I meant by the code decay comment.
Yes. Can we now look at FUJ 000590075, please?
Can I just say something here? Again, I don't know whether I've got the timings and the baselines in my head correctly, but CSR Plus was a new revised baseline. And at that time, whatever was running at the outlets would have been a different baseline anyway. So whether they had the same defects and issues in them, I don't know. I wouldn't know.
You wouldn't know because you didn't make inquiries about the ongoing impact of changes to Horizon?
No, because in conducting the audit, I was looking at the way the work was being done, right? And I was using numbers to demonstrate where there seemed to be still issues. But I can't equate CSR plus development audit back to whatever baseline was in place at Cleveland's at that time.
So comments in late 1999 about the problem, the figures indicate that the problems facing EPOS during the task force period have not diminished. Concerns about non-EPOS pinnacles, I mean, can they not be broadly applied, that they were concerns that you had relating to the EPOS product?
Well, the EPOS task force was looking at the baseline that was in place at the time because we were looking at live defects there. The CSR plus activity, unless I'm vastly mistaken, the development, the pinnacles were test pinnacles that were produced during testing cycles. And unless I've misunderstood my own report, you know, I don't know if those pinnacles that I'm counting there were live or whether they were the result of test.
So as at after 1998 to 1999 into 2000, you weren't concerned about the Horizon system?
Well, only insofar as I'd identified all of these pinnacles and defects that were still arising a year after the task force had tried to not put a stop to it, that would be virtually impossible, but to try to reduce the number to, you know, a manageable figure.
Well, let's move on and look at some specific instances that then crop up in 2000 and thereafter. On the screen at the moment, we have, it's FUJ 000590075, and that is a KEL, from known error log. This is November 2000, or it was raised by Anne Chambers in November 2000. So That is the time of a particular incident in Mrs. Wolstenholme's case. If we look at that, it's described as follows. It says, critical event on counter, and then it gives the message. And it says, sometimes a storm of these events occurs, refers to another known error log. And if we look at the bottom, the final sentence under problem, it says, it refers to another KEL, and it says it's with development for problems balancing while these events are occurring. I'm going to take you to a couple more. If we look at FUJ 000591141, this is the same known error log, but it says it's version 2. If we look at the problem there, it says possibly caused by an outstanding lock on the run table, which is cleared subsequently when ClearDesk runs. The problem is known to have affected at least 129 counters. If we now look at FUJ 000866680, this is a peak. It's one that we've looked at previously in this inquiry. It's a master call for phantom transactions. It begins in the 17th of April 2001. And I'll just read you a few entries within that peak. If we look at about halfway down, 14th of April, it says near the bottom of this page, the system seems to lose transactions, and PM is concerned that for every transaction that's error he notices, there is the probability that there are ones he misses, leading to discrepancies. The PM is at present finding the whole scenario very stressful and is suffering sleepless nights due to these problems. In the light of what has gone on, the PM is prepared to break his contractual obligations with POCL and refuse to pay any more discrepancies and will take legal action if required. If we scroll down that page, it says, as I was on the phone to the PM, he advised that 3 first-class stamps that were on the screen just dropped off. PM had 3 first-class stamps and other stamps for 30p. When the other stamps, 30p, went on, the first-class stamps disappeared. They've since put the 3 first-class stamps again. The first transaction that disappeared was put on as 2 first-class stamps, etc. If we go to page 4, about halfway down, it says, PM, it's about halfway down, 1st of May 2001. PM feels that the system is unreliable. PM cannot trust this system. If we go over the next page, 2nd of May, PM called in because the screen has crashed during his balance. He's got the blue stop screen error. If we go down towards the bottom of the page, 4th of May, it says, Kai Barnes has called in. I'm unsure as to what to do with this call now. ROMEC have been on site and state that they have actually seen the phantom transactions. So it's not just the PM's word now. They fitted suppressors to the kit, but the PM is still having problems. As yet, there has been no reoccurrence of the phantom transactions, but there still may be problems, etc. Thank you, that can come down. Would you accept that post-rollout there were issues affecting balancing or transactions or counters of some sub-postmasters in these kinds of logs and logs that you would have had access to?
Well, based on what I've seen just there, then yes, that's clear, isn't it?
Yes. Combined, of course, with earlier concerns about the EPOS system. I'm going to now take you to WITN 046000202. We're now on the 21st of August 2003, and we are looking at the Cleveley's case. You, by that stage, had been contacted by Jim Cruz about the Cleveley's case, and your answer to Mr. Cruz is as follows in relation to what you call the easy stuff. You say, one, we have no record of any transaction data from Cleveley's dated before November 2000 in the Central Audit Archive, since this was automatically deleted 18 months from the date that it is written. So if the 30th of November 2000 was the last active day for the counter, that data would have been deleted on or about the 30th of May 2002. And then you say, second, similarly, there will be no help desk logs, since these are also deleted after 18 months. Now, that number 2, that was wrong, wasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, what I'm referring to there is the formal audit records that are maintained that were then stored on the audit system and deleted after 18 months. And as you rightly say, subsequently, what I referred to, what Jason Coyne referred to as an unregulated source of data was found and located, but they were not the formal audit data that would have been submitted had it been requested to a court case. And personally, I wouldn't necessarily place reliance on it, since it wasn't formally captured in the audit record.
So you wouldn't place reliance on the help desk logs that were in fact ultimately provided to the expert, Mr. Coyne?
Well, I think from a legal perspective, I wouldn't know where they came from. You know, they weren't captured at the point of origin, at the time of origin, and they weren't stored securely. So they probably were the same as what was captured on the audit record.
Did you say weren't, sorry, or were?
No, they probably were the same, but I can't vouch for that.
If number 2 was wrong, could you be sure that number 1 also wasn't wrong?
Also wasn't wrong. No, number 1 was correct, because the transaction data would have been deleted 18 months after it was written, so it wouldn't be there. And 2 as I said, 2 refers to the help desk logs that were captured as part of the audit archive. They would have been deleted as well after 18 months. So,
but 2 was found.
No.
Or an unregulated version of 2 was found.
An unregulated set of records that were the help desk logs were located after the event, after they were deleted from the audit archive.
And was an attempt made to look for the equivalent for number 1, so some sort of unregulated record of the transaction data?
Not to my knowledge, no.
Might they have been available?
No, I don't think they would have been. Based on my knowledge of the system and how it worked, no, I don't think they would have been.
Why is it that you were able to find unregulated help desk logs, but no unregulated transaction data was produced? Was it looked for?
No, they emanate from different sources. So I can only assume that the help desk itself was maintaining records, but they weren't passed to the audit archive system. And that was the part I was commenting on there. They weren't available in the audit archive. And as I say, subsequently, help desk records were found, but they were nothing to do with the audit archive.
Can we look at poll 000955375, please? We're now on the 5th of February 2004, so quite some time after that initial contact in August 2003. And this is a letter to Colin Lenton Smith from Keith Baines at the post office. Did you see this letter at the time?
Possibly.
Had you had any contact with the post office subsequent to that 21st of August contact in respect of this case?
I don't know. I mean, there are some documents that have got dates and the points of my involvement with the various people, but I know there was a delay, or quite a delay, between when all these problems were supposed to have occurred when they occurred in 2000, and us getting involved through Jim Cruise's request for help. And it was linked, I think, to the production of Jason Coyne's expert report.
So if we look at the third paragraph that's currently on our screen, it says the county court instructed the parties jointly to commission a report from an expert approved by the court. And pausing there, did you understand that the expert was jointly instructed?
Well, only insofar as it's in Keith Baines's letter.
And did you understand the implications of that? Did you know what a jointly instructed expert was?
No, because I just assumed, rather, that we would be involved in that decision who to appoint, but it would appear not.
And it says that the expert was approved by the court.
Yeah, but the parties being presumably Mrs. Wolstenholme and Post Office, we were not part of any kind of appointment there.
So did you not take it to have any real significance that the expert had been jointly commissioned?
No, I didn't.
If we scroll down on that page, we'll see there, I'm sure you'll understand, Post Office is concerned by these findings, not only in relation to this particular case, but also because of any precedent that this may set and that may be used by the Post Office agents to support claims that the Horizon system is causing errors in their branch accounts. Was this the first occasion where you realised the potential implications of the Cleveley's case?
No, I mean, I think we've got to... How can I explain this? From Horizon's point of view, from my point of view, helping the Post Office resolve this was really just another piece of work coming down the line. I didn't have any personal buy-in to it. It was just a request for help to provide information. So essentially, it started off by seeking any help to counter some of the opinions in the expert's report.
So you didn't take it in any way personally?
No, it was work.
You didn't feel any kind of vested effort to win in this case?
No, I didn't have any skin in it at all, so why would I? It was just a piece of work that we were asked to do by the Post Office. We didn't have any real background other than the fact that the postmaster was in dispute and had confiscated the equipment and wouldn't return it. But other than that, it was just responding to the request made to us by the Post Office.
And do you feel that you maintained that neutral approach throughout the conduct of the case?
That's an interesting one, because clearly we didn't much like some of the comments and the attitude of the expert's report. But that's his report, so all we could do was try to counter some of the claims with what we felt were reasonable counter arguments.
And is your evidence that you maintained your professional approach throughout?
Yeah, I think I did.
Let's look at the actual witness, the expert's report. It's WITN 002-10101. Now, I'm not going to go... We've been through the report. It's over the page. We've been through the various opinions with other witnesses. I think you've been provided with this as part of your preparation, so I'm not going to go into detail at this stage on the report itself. I just want to take you to page 5 of the report, and that is the CV of the expert that appeared as part of the report. I'll just read to you the first few paragraphs. He says there, I confirm that I've made clear in my report those facts that are within my own knowledge and which I believe to be true, and that opinions I've expressed represent my true and complete professional opinion. I have no known connection with any of the parties, witnesses, or advisors involved in this case. Under the requirements of the Civil Procedure Rules 1999, as amended in January 2002, I confirm that I fully understand my duty to the court, and I have complied and will continue to comply with that duty. Were you aware at that time that an expert owes duties to the court?
No, I hadn't seen that document at that time.
Irrespective of, well, this document is in fact part of the opinion that you were provided with. If we scroll back, you'll see that this is just part of the opinion. It's the back, effectively the back page of the opinion. But irrespective of the opinion itself, you were somebody who was providing statements in court proceedings. Were you aware that an expert owes duties to the court?
No.
We see there near the bottom, it says Law Society 2003, accredited expert witness, and it gives his accredited expert witness number. Can we now look at WITN 046000302? So the expert report is dated the 21st of January or 20th of January, provided thereafter. By the 11th of February 2002, you are carrying out some investigations in order to address what's written in that report. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct, yeah.
So we have correspondence here between somebody called Mark Jones. Who was Mark Jones?
I'm sure I can remember. I think he was probably somebody who worked in customer services, but
If we scroll down,
I can't remember.
we can see Mark Jones, MSU team. Who was the MSU team?
I don't know. Management support unit, possibly.
And let's just have a read of that email. It says, Richard asked me to provide some call analysis from 2000. All the FADs here have 6 counter outlets. Cleveley's comes out top or bottom, depending on your view. Now, we see there are 6 outlets. You have Cleveley's. SD02 is software error, so that's the code that's been attributed by the help desk for software errors. And on the analysis from Mr. Jones that's come back soon after your receipt of that report, it seems as though Cleveley's has quite a high number, in fact the highest, comes out at the top or at the bottom, depending on your viewpoint, of those 6 counter outlets. This analysis is very much the point that Mr. Coyne was making in his report, isn't it?
Well, yeah, I guess so, yes.
So we're at February 2004. You knew at this stage, as we've been over, the troubled history of the EPOS product. You were aware of complaints by sub-postmasters, or you had access to those KELs and call logs that we have looked over. And now you've received from Mr. Jones of the Management Support Unit team figures that are entirely consistent with the report of Jason Coyne. Wasn't this, February 2004, the point to say there might actually be something in the sub-postmistress's complaint?
Yes, but remember, we were just responding to the post office request for help. It's not our place, it was not our place, at least I wasn't aware it was my place, to start challenging on behalf of the postmaster or the postmistress this information.
Because as you've said, you were entirely professional and neutral throughout.
Indeed, yes, trying to be.
I mean, you have the independent experts report, and now you see that Cleveland's is very much having problems with software errors. It was only one branch. It had obviously made calls about software errors. You didn't have the data because it had been deleted. How could you be confident that there was not a software issue in the branch?
Well, I couldn't, could I?
Can we please look at WITN 04600203? This is a document that you've produced. I think we've seen a few of these kinds of documents. Are they documents that you kept yourself, notes of what was happening at the time?
Yeah, this was an internal a document for internal consumption, just as an initial response to that report, because clearly Post Office wanted us to make some kind of formal response. So these were, if you like, my first drop-down thoughts of what was going on.
And if we scroll down, so you have a note there, today, 12th of February. So are we to take it that these notes were written on the 12th of February?
That's what that would imply, yes.
I think if we look at the top, it says that the report was in fact received by you on the 6th of February.
Yeah.
Can we please have a look over the page? You've said on P5, I've asked for an analysis of HSH calls from the 1st of January 2000 to 20th of November 2000 for Cleveland's and 20 other 6-counter outlets chosen at random with full error code analysis. I should have this today/tomorrow. So it seems, though, that by that stage, having received that information from Mark Jones, which showed Cleveland's at the top or the bottom of the list, you then commissioned further analysis of 20 other 6-counter outlets, or 20 6-counter outlets. I'd like to look at that final paragraph as well. You say at the end of that, blue screens and system freezes have always been a problem, and the stock HSH reply has always been to reboot. Did you acknowledge at that time in February that blue screens and system freezes had always been a problem?
Well, isn't that what that sentence says?
Absolutely. So are those your words and your acknowledgement there at that time that blue screens and system freezes had always been a problem, and the stock, as in the standard, the automatic HSH reply, had always been to reboot?
That was my understanding at the time, yes.
Can we go to FUJ 00121485? This is an early view that you have provided to Colin Lenton Smith on the 18th of February 2004. And we can look at the attachment. That's FUJ 00121486. So this is your early view response. If we've seen this document already, but if we scroll down to the second half of the page, it says on the 6th of February, POA, that's Fujitsu's post office accounts, received a copy of the expert's report with a request from POL for an early response. POL are concerned that the expert's opinion that the system was at fault might set a precedent against future POL prosecution. So that's essentially that letter that we saw from the post office. Is that right?
Yeah, that was our understanding at the time, or my understanding at the time.
And if we scroll down to reasonableness of calls, it says their post office account are able to review an unregulated archive of records of the other installed 6-counter outlets over a comparable period. The table below shows the output from that analysis. Now, sorry, could we just stick there for one moment on the previous page? So, the unregulated archive of records of the other installed 6 counter outlets over a comparable period. Do you remember what that exactly meant? Because that's quite specifically, it seems to be quite specifically worded, the other installed 6 counter outlets.
Yeah, now, on an earlier document, I said I wanted an analysis of 20 6-counter outlets selected at random. So when this information came back, if you scroll down, you will see that there aren't 20 6-counter outlets in existence at that time.
Absolutely.
So
well, there aren't 20 in that table.
No, but those are the 6-counter outlets that were identified, I believe. So there weren't any dropped off the end. They were the 6-counter outlets in existence at that point in time.
Can we put that side by side with WITN 046000302, please? I'm not sure I gave you advance notice on that. Thank you very much. So that's the email that you received from Mark Jones.
Yeah.
And let's look at the left-hand side. So he is saying all the FADs here are 6-counter outlets.
Yeah.
World's End. Where's World's End on the right-hand side?
No, I can't see it.
And Shoreham by Sea?
No, can't see it.
Cookstown?
Can't see it.
Halstead is there, in fact, on the right-hand side, so there is one that matches, although on the left-hand side we have 3 SDO2 codes, but that has increased to 7 on the right-hand side. Staines?
No, I can't explain the discrepancy.
I mean, those previous 6 counter outlets that had been identified seem to largely have been excluded from this table, the ones that had low numbers for software errors.
So it appears.
Do you know why those original figures were excluded from this table?
No, I've no idea. I mean, this second table on the right was also provided to me, so you know, I'm just being fed information to try and put it together to form some kind of coherent response. To be fair, I didn't notice the disparity between the two lists.
Is it possible that some were removed that didn't suit your case?
Not by me.
We can take down the left-hand side now. Thank you very much. In this table, the one that has been provided that doesn't provide those other counters with the lower figures, in that table, we still see Cleveland's with the second highest figure for S software issues.
Yeah.
Again, I don't want to repeat all the things that I've already said about the history, the logs that were available, the table that you originally received, your knowledge of things like blue screen freezes, blue screen system freezes. Looking at this, software number 2, the second worst in terms of numbers, did this not give you pause for thought at this stage?
No, because that wasn't what I was doing here. I wasn't sort of doing some kind of substantive test of the numbers and of errors. I was merely collating information to respond to the report. So whether that's an oversight on my part, okay, but I wasn't there analysing the figures themselves to understand what was going on beneath them. I was merely collating them to make a response.
Cleveland's it seems to have distinguished between rollout and post-rollout. That's the difference between 1 and 2. Was there the same analysis for those other branches, or was it just Cleveland's that the two differences were identified.
No, it looks just like Cleveland's.
Even if we take the second, the lower figure, because it doesn't include the Horizon rollout, the sub-postmistress still had cause to call the help desk 85 times in that period. It's not beyond fantasy that Mrs. Wolstenholme may have been experiencing software problems with Horizon, is it?
Well, no, those figures suggest that that was the case.
If we scroll down, there's the comment about Miss Elaine Tagg's statement. I wonder actually if we could bring that onto screen, the extract from Miss Tagg's statement in Mr. Coyne's report. That's WITN 00210101. If that could be brought alongside, that would be fantastic. So it's the second over the page on the left-hand side, and it is that the second half of that page. Thank you. So on the right-hand side, what you've said about the statement of Miss Elaine Tagg is, based on the analysis and without analysing each and every call record, it would be hard to dispute the opinion of the expert. And on the left-hand side, it shows what the expert was saying. He identified that Miss Elaine Tagg had said that Mrs. Wolstenholme persisted in telephoning the Horizon System help desk in relation to any problems which she had with the system generally. These problems relate to the use and general operation of the system and were not technical problems. And then Mr. Coyne's opinion was, this is, in my opinion, not a true representation on the evidence that I have had access to. And it seems as though you agreed with Mr. Coyne in that respect, at least at that stage.
Well, insofar as I said, based on the analysis, i.e. the table, but without analysing each and every call record, it's hard to dispute. And it is. Because
I think you're saying on the right-hand side that even if you take out the 15 that are classified as advice and guidance and the 16 that are to do with the rollout, you still have 70 calls. So Mrs. Tagg's statement in that respect can't possibly rewrite in terms of them not being technical problems. Is that right?
Yeah, well, I guess so. I mean, clearly there were some problems there that Mrs. Wolstenholme was experiencing.
And there is at least some truth in Mr. Coyne's opinion in that respect.
Yes, I believe that's the case, yeah.
Can we stay with the document on the right-hand side, please? And enlarge, thank you. If we could scroll over to the next page, page 3. We then get to the operator advice to reboot. And the second paragraph there, you say, in this context, the opinion of the expert that the instruction treats the effect and not the cause is correct. Again, it seems, at least in some respects, there you are agreeing with Mr. Coyne.
Well, yes, he is right. I mean, rebooting the system might be the instruction that's given to the postmaster, and it does deal with the effect and not the cause. So there should be further work undertaken to try and understand what the cause was, determine the root cause, and find a way of removing it. In
this document, so in this initial response, one thing you don't go as far as to say is that your admission that blue screens and freezes have always been a problem. I don't think that's contained in this document, is it?
Possibly not, no.
If we scroll down to the final paragraph in this document about discrepancies, it says this argument has been put forward by a number of PMs in the past when challenged and prosecuted by Pol for alleged fraudulent behaviour, and each time it's fallen when confronted by transaction data that demonstrates that the system was operating normally during the disputed time period. Was that the general view at Fujitsu? Was that a view that was held by your colleagues, that because it hadn't been proved in the past, that it in itself demonstrates that there isn't a problem.
Yeah, that's fair enough. You could say that.
Can we please now look at WITN 046-00304? We are now in the 17th of February 2004, and this is an email from Steve Parker. Can you help us with who Steve Parker was?
No, I was looking at this myself the other day, and can you just scroll down to what was presumably my request for help?
Absolutely.
Right, that's not very helpful, is it? Yeah, so obviously I sent him the expert report and the call volume comparison.
And if we scroll up,
yeah, you can
the words in I'm slightly colourblind. I think I'd say purple. Blue. Are from Steve Parker. Is that right?
Yes, that's correct. Yeah.
He said, I've had a chance to read through this now. Here are a few thoughts you might like to develop. And it's the worrying discrepancies section that I'd like to look at. It says, must be the major issue. Counter systems cause discrepancies. I think he's stating that that is the argument that is put forward. Answer has to be no way. Almost all accounting errors in computer systems are caused by user error. GIGO principle, did you understand that to be garbage in, garbage out principle?
Yes, I did, yeah.
And then it says systems are in place to resolve discrepancies. And then we have, yes, software errors can make such mistakes. However, the system is in place to ensure that such errors are picked up and resolved. If this problem was caused by a software error, the same error would exist on all Horizon sites. 17,000 postmasters are not complaining of misbalancing and discrepancies. I mean, that is nonsense, isn't it?
At the time, I thought that was rather glib. And I don't think any of this was used in further correspondence between me and the post office.
I mean, it seems the impression that's given is that it's getting a little desperate to look for some sort of counter-argument to what Mr. Coyner's saying. Would you accept that?
Yeah, I mean, if I could remember who Steve Parker was and what role he played, what position he had, I might be able to put this more into context as to why that reply came back looking like it did. But I remember at the time, I wasn't overly impressed with it, and the comment at the end that it would exist on all Horizon sites. 17,000 PMs are not complaining. I mean that's well, I'm sorry, that's just silly.
Can we look at WITN 046-00305? This is a response from Richard Brunskill to yourself. So his response is in colour. Yours is in, your original email is in black. I'm going to start with your words. You say there, the Cleveland situation has us a bit on the back foot. And I'm having to bring in POL-imposed SLAs as a form of justification for HSH advice, being to reboot 9 times out of 10. Back foot, I mean, that sounds a bit like a competition, like you're getting outmaneuvered. Was that your concern at the time?
No, outmaneuver's wrong. I mean, we had to go on the defensive, and clearly HSH advice being to reboot 9 times out of 10 on the face of it looks unacceptable, so we have to understand why that is. And the argument was used that the purpose of the HSH is to get the postmasters up and running as quickly as possible and not interfere and not interrupt their business cycle. So sometimes the easy answer was to say reboot and then you're up and running again. The question that was raised by Mr. Coyne was what happened to that after they rebooted? Did they do anything with it? Well, yes, they did, because the presence of Kells, where these things have been further investigated, suggests that work was done after the event to try and better understand what was going on. So it wasn't just a case of, Yep, you've got a problem, reboot, next one, reboot, next one. It wasn't quite that straightforward and simple.
That's not actually the question that I'm asking you. I'm asking you about that first sentence and the way that it's worded. You're saying you're on the back foot, and then you're saying I'm having to bring POL-imposed SLAs as a form of justification. Now, it might be suggested that having to bring in the SLA means you didn't otherwise have a good answer to why the advice was to reboot 9 out of 10 times.
Yeah, that's a fair comment.
I mean, thinking back to your evidence earlier and about how you were professionally and coolly responding, only providing information, do you think by this stage you've lost a little bit of objectivity?
I don't think so. I mean, I'm trying to, I say, justify. I mean, if the advice is being given by the HSH to do that, they must be doing that for a reason. And one of those reasons is SLAs that are imposed by POL to get the postmasters up and running a bit more quickly. Having us on a bit of a back foot's just a phrase, isn't it? I mean, we're trying to find ways of, or I'm trying to find ways of justifying the advice, but not necessarily just limiting it to that advice. And you don't just do that and walk away.
If we look at what Mr. Brunskill has said in response to question 1, your question was time to fault resolution from original call and how was fault resolution defined, getting the outlet back up or fully resolving the problem. So your question about the SLA is, was the SLA about getting the outlet up and running, or was it about actually resolving the problem? And we have there Mr. Brunskill's response. He says, depends on the issue, simple advice and guidance at the time centred around resolution in 5, 10, 30 or 45 minutes, depending on the query. Blue screens or system freezes would generally have been coded as software and claimed under break-fix SLTs, which, depending on which branch's location, fall into the local, intermediate or remote category, with anything from 4 to 24 hours to fix. I would expect a software call to be resolved by either a reboot, workaround, or kit swap. The underlying issue is not subject to SLA. This can be fixed as per release timetable, etc. The issues under the SLA is get the branch up and running again, hence the proliferation of reboots to solve known problems and get things going. So what he's saying there is that the SLA is not about fixing the problem, it's about getting the branches up and running because it's about timing and speed of resolution. Do you accept that?
It's to do with timing to get the branch up and running again. The problem resolution is subject to other activities and other schedules.
And what he's saying there is that you can't rely on the SLA about resolution because the SLA is about getting it up and running again essentially as quickly as possible.
That's correct, yeah.
And he says, hence the proliferation of reboots to solve known problems. Proliferation, it's not a positive word. I mean, it's often used in the context of nuclear weapons, something you don't want to happen. Is your reading here that he is not being overly positive about the use of reboots to fix problems?
No, I didn't read that into his words. I just read as a high number.
Do you read it now, looking at it? Proliferation of reboots. I mean,
no, I don't. I was still just seeing as 9 out of 10 reboots being the solution from the Horizon System Help Desk. Didn't see anything deeper in it than that.
Can we look at WITN 04600306? And this is another response here from David Cook.
Yep.
Can I just ask you to have a read of that? And what I want to understand is that second paragraph. He says, Any reboots that took place during a session would have wiped all EPOS transactions. Am I to read into this that there is a suggestion that reboots could wipe EPOS transactions or not?
Well, that's what the words say. And David and James were both very knowledgeable members of the technical members of the team. So this is Dave Cook, isn't it?
Yeah.
So if Dave says any reboots that took place during the session would have wiped all EPOS transactions, I would take that as a truth.
And is that potentially problematic?
I don't know, because I don't know all the technical details that go behind the reboot and wiping old transactions and re-establishing transactions once they've been rebooted. As I said in my first in November, I'm not a technical person, so you're getting into levels of detail that I really can't answer.
Well, I mean, these are emails to you from people providing you with information in which to respond to a technical expert's report. At the time, did you feel you didn't have the technical expertise to respond to that expert report?
No, because I did reply to it.
And did you say to anybody, I just don't have the expertise to be able to address these matters?
No, I can reflect what people tell me.
I mean, we're in the context of litigation here, court proceedings, quite a serious matter where witness statements are being provided, an expert's been jointly instructed, a response is being provided to that expert in the context of court proceedings. Do you feel that you didn't have the expertise to be doing the job you were doing in that respect?
Well, I felt comfortable at the time, but now you're challenging it. I'm not so sure I was.
Can we look at FUJ 00121512, please? We're here now on the 20th of February 2004. This is the response to Keith Baines from Colin Lenton Smith, attaching the appendix, which is the response.
Yeah.
If we turn over the page, please, thank you. Horizon System Help Desk. Could we also, sorry to trouble you again, but could we bring onto screen WITN 046000305 alongside this? Thank you very much. The first paragraph under Horizon System Help Desk, it says, it operates under strict contractual service level agreements covering aspects such as pickup time, first time fix, and time to close. Refreshing our memory from what Richard Brunskill said, I mean, the essence of what he said is it's not really about the SLA. Do you think that there was too much focus in light of that on the right-hand side in the response on the SLA?
I'm not quite sure what you're getting at. The SLA exists and has to be met in our relationship with the post office.
Your request to Richard Brunskill was about, I'm having to bring in the SLA in order to defend ourselves. I effectively want to say that's going to that's also about getting the outlet back up and running fully. And Richard's response to you is it's not really about getting it up and running fully. It's about the speed at which we get up. It's not about resolving the SLA itself is not about resolving the underlying dispute, technical issue.
Is that what you mean by fully? So if you fully resolve the call, you get them up and running, and you solve the problem. In that case, no, the SLA isn't about fully doing that. It's about getting the outlet back up and running.
But do you think it was still appropriate, after having received Mr. Brunskill's email, to be focusing in your response on the SLA, which was about quick fix?
In response to the statement at 9 out of 10, I can't think of any other way of doing it. If the reboot advice is there and it's happening 9 times out of 10, or too many times to be acceptable to Mr. Coyne, based on his knowledge and experience, we have to explain why that is operating like that with that frequency of reboots. And the reason it was through the SLAs requiring that we get the post offices back up and running.
And what Mr. Brunskill is saying is that the underlying issue itself is not subject to the SLA.
No, it's not, because that will fall into a different sort of line of activity, which was, I suppose, putting all these problems into a bucket, looking at pinnacles and peaks, and then aligning them with releases where the work is done to fix the problem, or putting a workaround in place through a CAL.
The final sentence of Mr. Brunskill's first paragraph, where he says, hence the proliferation of reboots to solve known problems and get things going, does that in any way feature in the response?
What, in the response on the right?
Yeah, so the kind of his mention of proliferation of reboots, the mention of known problems. Does the word known problems even appear on the right-hand side?
No, because on the right-hand side we're saying why we do the reboots. Quick response to their call, and to the extent possible over the phone, a quick response to their call, and to the extent possible over the phone, a timely return to normal business operations, which is what the SLA was trying to do.
If you had mentioned in that response that people were being told to reboot to solve known problems, to get things going, do you think that would have undermined your case?
No, because the desire to reboot to get the business up and running still exists, whether it's a known fault or an unknown fault, new fault.
And is there reference to known faults on the right-hand side?
I don't know. I don't think so.
Can we keep the right-hand side on the screen, please, and turn to page number 4 of that document? We have there, I think, for the first time, this paragraph. It's worth noting that Fujitsu Services is not aware of similar complaints or claims being made from other outlets in the above list, some of which have higher call profiles than Cleveland's. Now, that's quite a carefully worded sentence. You are there referring only, it seems, to the outlets in the above table. Is that right?
Yeah. Yes.
Yes, because, of course, Fujitsu couldn't have said that they are not aware of similar complaints or claims being made by outlets in general, could they? You couldn't have broadened it to outlets, because that wouldn't have been true, because there were similar complaints or claims being made from other outlets. Is that right?
Presumably, yes.
Do you remember wording this quite carefully in that regard?
No, because I don't think I worded that sentence. This is a letter from Colin Lenton Smith, isn't it?
The letter is sent by Colin Lenton Smith.
Yeah.
It includes what is called a response to experts' opinion. Most of the words have appeared in your initial thoughts document, not all, and we'll come to not all. But is it your evidence that, in fact, this paragraph was inserted by somebody else?
I honestly can't remember. I just don't know. I know that Colin may well have tweaked some of the content before he sent it off, because it was going off in his name. Whether he put that sentence in or not, I don't know. Whether I put that sentence in, I can't remember.
Does it sound like your kind of writing? Does it sound like something that you would have said?
I can't comment on that. I don't know.
If we zoom out on this page, are you able to assist us with where on this response the acceptance of Mr. Coyne's criticism of Elaine Tagg's statement features? I mean, we read that in your initial draft. Where is that now?
I don't know. It's not there.
Did you remove it? Did somebody else remove it?
I can't remember, and I don't know.
I mean, you'll remember when we looked at it, it was something that you felt was that Mr. Coyne was right on. Do you remember removing comments that were positive in favour of Mr. Coyne?
No, I don't think. No, I wouldn't have done that.
Well, who would have?
I've no idea. I mean, this is 24 years ago.
Well, you said you're sure that you wouldn't have removed it, but equally you have no recollection because it was 24 years ago. I mean,
I'm not sure whether I would have removed it or not. I can't remember if I did.
Can we look at page 5, please? We have there the conclusion. The report presented by the expert is based on a simple analysis of HSH records and not a detailed understanding of how the Horizon system works or even the prime objectives of the Horizon system help desk. The criticism there is that it's a simple analysis. Do you think that Mr. Coyne had been provided with enough information at that stage to provide more of an analysis than he did?
I don't know. You'd have to ask Post Office that because they provided him with whatever information they did.
Well, I mean, he didn't have transaction data. We know that much, don't we? Because that had been destroyed. The help desk original records had also, it's your evidence, had been destroyed, but another version had been found.
Indeed, yeah.
But that's all that you recall having been provided by Fujitsu in respect of this case. Well, to Paul, sorry, yes.
Yeah, and because we had no direct contact with Jason Coyne, everything went through Paul because it was their relationship.
We see in later documents reference to inviting Mr. Coyne to attend Fujitsu, but at this stage, are you aware of any invitation having been made to Mr. Coyne to attend Fujitsu or to obtain further documentation?
No, not at this first cycle.
And we see there it says, consequently, the opinions expressed in this report, whilst not always incorrect, do not present the whole story and are presented from a single perspective. And Mr. Coyne was a joint expert. The parties had agreed to rely on a joint expert. Your criticism is that he presents from a single perspective. How many experts would have been enough?
So I don't understand what you're getting at there.
Presented from a single. What did you mean by presented from a single perspective? Do you mean he's only one man?
No. He had a view and he put it forward. We didn't always agree with it.
Well, simple analysis, single perspective. He was a jointly appointed expert, selected by agreement between the Post Office and the defendant in that case.
Yeah.
Liaising with the Post Office's own solicitors. Do you think that that's a fair criticism?
I think it's just a statement. It's not a criticism as such. Just say, it's a statement that was how we felt at the time about his report. And we put together what we felt was a fairly well presented rebuttal. And as we'll see, consequently, he just said it didn't make any difference.
And as at the 20th of February 2004, is your evidence that you are still maintaining your professional, calm approach to this case?
Yes.
So I think that might be an appropriate time to take a 15-minute break. Could we come back at 11:35?
Certainly. All right, 11:35.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, sir. Mr. Holmes, I'm just going to take you before the break referred to the expert's response where his view stayed the same. Let's look at that. That's FUJ 00121535. So we have here, this is the response from Mr. Coyne to Waitman Vizards. And if we look at the final page, and sorry, the second page even, he says things like, defective equipment, I'm confident in my statement. Worrying discrepancies, we see the final sentences there. In short, to answer the question posed in your letter, no, my opinion currently remains as stated in my original note. We went through this morning your history of the EPOS problems, 98, 99, 2000. We went through some error logs from the contemporaneous period that Mrs. Wolstenholme was having her issues, referring to software problems affecting transactions. We saw that first table that was sent to you by Mark Jones in February showing that Cleveley's was at the top of the list or the bottom of the list, depending on your perspective. We saw Richard Brunskill's comments about the proliferation of reboots. We saw also your own agreement with important parts of Mr. Coyne's original report. And now we have a further response from the jointly appointed expert where he has maintained his view. Was now the 2nd of March 2004 not the time to say enough is enough? We give in, put up the white flag.
Sorry, is that a question?
Yes. It started with the word would.
Possibly yes, but at the time we decided we'd have one more pass around to see if we could provide any kind of extra assistance that might help him to change his mind. Things like, because we couldn't provide crash dumps on failure of the period in question, we could invite him to Stevenage to see how they actually worked and operated. But, I mean, he obviously had decided he turned his face against that offer. It wasn't just to be a walk round, as he suggested. We were prepared to give him access to people and systems so that he could do further testing and digging around that he wanted to do. So it wasn't just a PR stunt to try and soften him up. It was a serious attempt to offer him access to parts of the system that normally we wouldn't provide access to.
Did you do your own investigations at that time of the known error logs, the peaks, the pinnacles, looking at the time when Mrs. Wolstenholme was experiencing her problems, investigating other branches to see if they were experiencing similar problems, looking at the kinds of KELs that we looked at this morning?
Nope.
Can we look at FUJ 00121549? This is a day after that reply was received. This is from you to Colin Lenton Smith, attaching your initial thoughts on Jason Coyne's reply. And that reply is at your response is at FUJ 00121550. Thank you. And the third paragraph there, you say, I've spoken to Jim Cruz, and we both feel that there is probably another opportunity to influence Jason Coyne's opinion by inviting him to Bracknell and providing him with access to data, records, and people who can deal with his observations directly. Did you really feel at that stage, so far down the line, having everything in mind that I've just been mentioning, did you really think that it was proper to be trying to influence the independent, jointly appointed experts' opinion at that late stage?
Well, influence is a word. I mean, it's. Can we just put something into context here? At the beginning of Horizon going in, this provision of litigation support, prosecution support that we were obliged to do, was absolutely in its infancy, and each case was unique insofar as if it wasn't just providing them with audit data, if it was other pieces of information, work, or whatever that they wanted, it was new every time. So we were learning all the time how to go through this process with the post office. This was the first time, to my knowledge, that we had to interact with, through the post office, with an expert witness. So when I say influence, I don't mean, come on, Jason, change your mind. It was more about giving him access to the things that might help him change his mind or change his opinion.
Were you, by this stage, quite frustrated with the situation?
This was disappointing. The response was disappointing. Essentially, we put quite a lot of work into preparing our response to his report, and it was pretty much dismissed as having no effect on his opinion. So, yes, disappointing is a word, not frustrated, but disappointing. And we wanted to try to see if there was a way we could influence is probably not the right word, but offer him further evidence that might help him change his opinion. That was all.
Is disappointing as high as you would put it? Were you still cool and professional?
Yes, we were.
Can we look at FUJ 00121557, please? I'll let you have a moment with this particular email, Mr. Holmes.
Yeah, that's fine.
11th of March 2004. Colin, I've done a bit more to this, but if I continue, I fear I might call him a git or something worse. Still.
Well, it's like the other email. It's like the other email where I say I don't want to piss the expert off. I mean, yeah, disappointing, frustrating, but it's just business, isn't it?
Is it? I mean, calling somebody a git. I mean, the impression that is given here is that you're taking it a little too personally. Do you disagree with that?
I do. It's an internal email.
You originally agreed with some of the comments in Mr. Coyne's report. We took you to those earlier.
Yeah, that's
Do you
true.
think taking this approach so far down the line, March 2004, was appropriate?
What you mean, going back for another, giving the opportunity to come and visit locations and speak to people and dig into systems?
No, I mean calling an independently, jointly appointed expert in court proceedings who has produced report and a further report, some of which you, in fact, agreed with, calling him a git.
Well, I've got nothing more to say to that.
Can we therefore turn to FUJ 00121561, please? We're now at the 12th of March 2004. An email from yourself to Colin Lenton-Smith. You've said, I've transferred the contentious statement from the paper to the email because it's not in our interest to piss the expert off. That said, it has to be pointed out to Jim that his report is far from impartial, and in truth, we have a problem because there's little we can do to dispel some of his assertions other than to say rubbish. Final sentence there, Pol have to decide what they want to see happening here. I understand the reputational aspects of the situation, but I fear that POA, that's the Fujitsu post office accounts, are on the back foot. There's again reference to back foot. Did you still continue to see it as some sort of combat between yourselves and Mrs. Wolstenholme?
No, because as I've explained before, we weren't involved directly with Mrs. Wolstenholme. We were involved with Post Office Limited, POL. Okay, so the arrangement between Paul and Mrs. Wolstenholme and through Jason Coyne was their relationship. We were just trying to help Paul solve their problem.
And who were you on the back foot against?
Well, yeah, because whether or not Paul managed the expert, they did very little to refute or challenge the report. They just passed it all on to us to do. So if there was an issue of reputation on the system brought through by Jason Coyne's report or his opinion, Paul did very little to dispute or challenge it, and it was all down to us. And if the system came under challenge through that, then obviously Post Office account were potentially at risk of a reputational impact. And we're on the back foot. There's nothing we can do about it.
And did you see this case as an important case in which to defend your reputation as a company?
Well, obviously, anything is a anything to do with reputation is an important one to defend. But as I said a couple of minutes earlier, these were early days. This was a learning curve. This was first time through for this kind of work. We used to provide audit data, but that's fairly straightforward. Take the request, provide a CD and a witness statement as to how it was stored and retrieved, etc. But this, where it's bespoke, I suppose, piece of work, we're learning as we're going.
I mean, as time went on, of course, Fujitsu got more involved in cases and provided witness statements in respect of quite a number of cases. Were you involved in that?
No. This essentially, I think, was my last sort of stab at this, because from about 2005 onwards, I started migrating to different aspects of work away from litigation support. And if you go back to the very original email from Pete Sewell to me, the original request was sent into security, and he asked if I could take up the work, because presumably they were busy, I don't know. So I did.
So if this was all a bit difficult for you and for your department because you weren't used to this kind of thing, do you think it was appropriate?
That's not what I said. I didn't say it was difficult. I just said it was novel and new.
And do you think that Fujitsu and people within Fujitsu were sufficiently qualified to continue to be involved in court proceedings after this?
Well, interesting one. I mean, this started off as being asking for help to refute a report from an expert witness. Yes, and I felt that we were able to do that, and we made our attempts and failed.
If we scroll down on this page, there's the draft email to Jim Cruz that was written by yourself.
Yeah.
If we look at the penultimate paragraph, just above that actually, it says, the next step is to make available to him the people, data, resources at Post Office account and allow him to address his doubts to the true experts and practitioners. In conclusion, it has to be said that his analysis of the situation is at best selective and at worst simply wrong, and his conclusions partial. Do you regret calling Mr. Coyne's conclusions partial?
Well, that was my opinion at the time.
And I think I saw some of Mr. Coyne's evidence yesterday. Looking back, do you still continue to view him as partial?
Yeah, but you're applying hindsight now. This was written in 2004. That was my view at the time. Whether my view has changed now based on what I saw yesterday or the situation as it's gone on, it's what it is now, but that's what it was then.
And what is it now?
I don't know. Maybe we got it wrong.
I can read to you an extract from the Bates litigation. It's the Horizon Issues Judgment, number 6. I can bring it onto screen if you like, but I'll just read you an extract from paragraph 800. It says, and this is Mr. Justice Fraser, he says, I consider Mr. Coyne to have been a helpful and constructive witness. This is in the Bates litigation, not in the Cleaveley's case, of course. And I find the suggestions made to him that he was biased to the claimants and not independent are criticisms that are not justified. He and his small number of assistants had done a great amount of investigation into the very numerous peaks and the smaller number of kells, and he had embarked upon a careful and sensible exercise necessary for him to reach conclusions on the Horizon issues as drafted and agreed by the parties and approved by the court. I won't bring it up, but for the transcript, it's poll 000228840. Considering the evidence that you saw yesterday or the day before yesterday, in fact, of Mr. Coyne, do you regret the kinds of allegations that are made in these emails to the post office or in your internal emails, the words used, Git, for example, looking back now on what you've heard and what you heard in phase 2 of this inquiry?
Well, yep, some of those comments may have been misplaced and inappropriate. But as I said, that was the situation in 2004. We're now in 2023 with different information available. So, your opinion can change.
But of course, you did agree with some of his original opinion, and you had background from your earlier involvement in the EPOS matters in those various issues that were going on within Fujitsu.
Yes, that's correct.
Can we look at FUJ 001211724, please? Now, we're going to come back to this email because it's dated 20th of August 2004, so I'm taking it slightly out of sequence in time. But I just want to take you to number 2 there, which references the Shobnall Road case. It says there that Shobnall Road has come back. Bill has apparently been asked to provide a witness statement to the effect that nothing contained in the HSH calls over the period in question could have caused or be described as a system malfunction. I'm attaching a brief analysis of the HSH transcripts that I did in April. Comments made by engineers that keyboards can cause phantom transactions do not help the post office position. I suspect that we cannot make them the statement required, and when post office read the transcripts in detail, they may well think that they could not submit them anyway. The reason I'm taking you to this now is there's reference to you being involved and analysing the transcripts in April from Shobnall Road. So this is around the same time as those emails I've taken you to where you are accusing Mr. Coyne of being partial. You were, it seems, reading the transcripts in the Shobnall Road case. Do you remember doing that?
No, I don't.
Well, I can take you to the analysis of the transcripts. I think it's FUJ 001211725. Is this the analysis that you were doing in April 2004 in the Shobnall Road case?
Well, it looks like it, but I don't remember it.
Okay, well, I'll read you a few extracts from it. If we start with the 6th of January 2003, it says, postmaster failing to register transactions, freezing when scanning, phantoms when unfreezing. 7th of January, SSC could not recreate the problem as described by the postmaster. 2 known error logs are referenced. HSH then asked about lighting as could cause interference. PM also using an RF baby monitor and local cab firm had been operating and setting off burglar alarms. PM also stated suffering from power surges, call closed and raising new call as environmental, but no evidence of new call. If we scroll down to the substantive entry on the 12th of December 2002, it says new screen and cable fitted, and both engineers saying problem is not the monitor, phantom transactions and not registering real transactions, certain products not registering at all. HSH advice keyboard can cause phantom transactions as well, but as she has been having so many problems with figures disappearing, then the keyboard and base unit will be swapped. An entry 6th of December 2002, PM, screen not responding and keyboard will not work. Also system freezing and then releasing itself. Later HSH suggested rebooting, but did not resolve the problem. HSH records shows replaced screen due to phantom transactions / calibration problems. This was your analysis in April of 2004. At the risk of repeating myself, is now not the time to say maybe Mr. Coyne's report is not so wrong after all? I mean, we have there a sub-postmaster experiencing issues with transactions. They're referred to by Fujitsu as phantom transactions. We've seen the earlier known error log from years before that referring to phantom transactions. You were no doubt aware of the description of phantom transactions. Is April 2004 the time to say maybe we should agree with what Mr. Coyne has to say?
Well, with hindsight, possibly yes. But I still felt it was worth having another go. Post Office didn't. They didn't offer the response to Mr. Coyne, so that was the end of it.
Can we turn to FUJ 00121637, please? We're now moving to June 2004, 7th of June. It's an email from yourself to Colin Lenton Smith. I'm going to read to you a few extracts. Poll are still taking advice as to how best to deal with this, and Mandy's view / belief was the safest way to manage this is to throw money at it and get a confidentiality agreement signed. She's not happy with the, quote, experts report, as she considers it to be not well balanced and wants, if possible, to keep it out of the public domain. This is unlikely to happen if it goes to court. The next paragraph, the final sentence, the liability question is removed, and it's then just about how much to go away and keep your mouth shut. One concern I have is that while they've been dickering about waiting for guidance from their agents, the trial date has been set, and it's now too late for them to enter a witness statement that might further repudiate the expert's original report. This means their counsel, I think that means counsel with an S, might have to have thorough briefing by us before going to court. By the 7th of June 2004, do you think that you, by that stage, had lost all objectivity in respect of this matter?
What makes you say that?
Well, for example, history of EPOS, error logs that we saw, table that was sent to you, Richard Brunskill's comments,
I know all that, but what makes you say, had I lost all...
looking at the final paragraph, you are still trying to further repudiate the expert's original report, and that is a report that, in some respects at least, you originally agreed with. Why are you persisting in June 2004 to try and fight this matter?
I'm not. This is an internal mail to Colin saying it's now too late for them, Poll, to enter a witness statement that might further repudiate the expert's original report if they chose to do it. But if they didn't, and they didn't, then it's a different end game, isn't it?
But the impression given by that email, though, is that you're quite frustrated that you're not going to be able to defend yourselves.
No, that's not so. That's your interpretation. That's not what was meant by that.
And I'm giving you an opportunity to say whatever you like on that. What's your interpretation of this email?
Just that if they wanted to further repudiate, which they decided not to, then it's getting very late. The trial date's been set for them to enter a witness statement that might further repudiate the expert's original report. That's all.
And the final sentence, do we need to involve Masons at this stage? Masons being Fujitsu's lawyers, is it?
Yes, that's correct.
Why were you wondering whether you needed to involve your own lawyers at that stage?
It was simply because it was getting up to a court situation, and it was a question that I was asking Colin as the commercial manager. Do we need to involve Masons at this stage? Nothing more or less than that.
Can we look at WITN 046000309, please? Is this your note?
Yeah, this is my day book.
Can you assist us with the date in the top left-hand corner? Is this the same date? Is this 7th of June 2004? Is it the middle number could be a 5, it could be a 6. Perhaps we could zoom in on that, if possible. I think that's a 6. Is that 7th of June, same date?
It looks like a 6, yeah.
The final entry on that page is fear that throwing money at the problem is the only way to deal with it. Either admit the report, concede the content is accurate, in brackets it is, but opinion is crap. Liability is removed. Question how much to keep your mouth shut. What did you mean here in brackets? That the content is accurate, but opinion is crap.
Well, that's contemporaneous record of the conversation I had with Mandy Talbot on the phone. So it must have come out of that conversation.
And do you think those were her words or your words?
I can't remember.
Can we look at FUJ 00121668, please? 30th of July 2004.
Mm-hmm.
We have an email from yourself to Colin Lenton-Smith. You've spoken to Keith Baines, who alluded to a number of other calls that he was going to have to make on the case, but didn't pass any details on. He said that Dave Smith would be speaking to Ian on the subject. It seems Dave believes we, not sure whether that's the royal we or just us, have conceded that we should not have done what we should not have done, and Paul are now in a difficult position. Given our late involvement by Paul, I trust he's not trying to park it all on us. At this stage, July 2004, was there something of a blame game going on in relation to this case?
Well, no, it was just that in that conversation with Keith, obviously, you know, he said Dave Smith, and we saw that slide that Dave Smith produced in the session this morning with Jason Coyne. You showed him a slide that Dave Smith had produced. And again, I don't know who we is. I don't know whether it's we POA or we Pollen POA have conceded what we should not have done, and I'm not sure what we did concede. And now Poll are in a difficult position. So, as you know, so my concern there was, well, is he now trying to park the blame on us, or is he sort of saying that, you know, we've got to find a way of managing this? And my comment about given our late involvement, bear in mind that we didn't get involved in this until, was it February 2004? and the issues were all happening in 2000, 2001. I just wanted to be certain that he wasn't going to try and push this all onto us and say we've done a bad job. So I didn't think we did.
Was there pressure in that respect? Did you feel pressure coming from Pol that you may be blamed in this case?
Well, no. I mean, the words there are the words that came from that conversation with Keith. My feeling, my understanding, my belief, and my concern. But seeing as I didn't know who we were, was it POA? Was it POA and Pol, or was it Pol? Yeah. So I was just concerned that he was gonna try and say it's all our fault.
Moving to August 2004, can we look at WITN 046-00310, please? Is this also a note that you made?
Yeah, it was a case conference call that was held in August, and I was just making handwritten notes of the progress of the meeting.
Now, SL is Pol's counsel. So where there are references to SL, it seems that is to Stephen Levinsky.
Again, incorrectly spelt, so I apologise for that, but yes.
Okay, yes. His advice is recorded there. If we look at the final two sentences of his advice, it says, I think it says, had if goes to dispute, likely to find that computer system let Julie Wolstenholme down. Was it your understanding that counsel's advice was that if it went to court, the court was likely to find that the computer system had let the sub-postmistress down?
That's what you can read into that. That was his opinion.
Can we look at page 3, please? We have halfway down that page another opinion from Post Office's counsel. It's recorded as saying, cannot say that there were no glitches. We'll be candid about that. But what did we do to help it? So the focus seems to be not on the fact that there were no errors, but now it's turning to the help desk and assistance that was provided to Mrs. Wolstenholme. Do you recall that?
Well, that's what that looks like.
At this meeting, did you feel able to talk freely?
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple of entries with my initials against it.
Yes. I mean, if we look at the first page, it's a discussion that involves yourself, Pol Commercial, Pol Legal, Waitman Vizards, Mason. So that's your own solicitors, is it?
Yeah.
Pol Commercial, Pol Council there.
Yeah. So I mean, essentially, it was a Pol case conference call, and I was there. I think probably because of my involvement in it up to that point.
If you disagreed with something, would you have felt free to say so?
Yes, but I would have been out of my depth talking to the legal guys.
If we look at page 4, it says, I think it's status of second report. That's the second report that you had written.
Yes.
Not forwarded to Mr. Coyne.
Correct.
KB and I need to get our act together. KB agreed. Now, that second report was the one that offered, I think, for Mr. Coyne to attend Fujitsu.
Yes, that's correct.
Do you recall why it wasn't forwarded to Mr. Coyne?
No. In fact, I'm not sure I found out about it until really quite late after the event. But yeah, it wasn't forwarded to Coin. I don't know why. Paul must have had a view that said it wouldn't make any difference, so they ain't going to do it.
This was August 2004. You were part of the meeting with the Post Office and the legal team. Was that a decision that you were part of?
Sorry, what decision? Not to forward the report?
Yes. I mean, it certainly reads as though you were part of the decision-making process in that respect.
No, that's how you're reading it, but I wasn't part of that decision-making process. That was a poll decision on their own.
And did you respond when you were told that it wasn't forwarded to Mr. Coyne?
No, we were just disappointed.
And it says, Keith Baines and I need to get our act together. What did you mean by that?
Well, I think there were some outstanding documents that we needed to get sorted out. And it's just a phrase, isn't it? We need to get our act together. Keith agreed. And there's an email following it where there's a list of items that I said I would be producing, which I did. And I think Keith had a similar list.
Can we now look at WITN 046-00215, please? August 16th, we have an email from yourself to Bill Mitchell. And you say, Bill, just a quick note to let you know that Mrs. Wolstenholme finally accepted an increased offer from the Post Office to settle her case. Equipment will be returned as part of the court order, and she will have a confidentiality clause associated with her settlement. However, she was still going to call a host of other PMs as part of her case, so I guess the issue of poor systems and inadequate levels of support argument could well be rolled out again. In that meeting that you had with counsel, the advice from counsel was that if you get into a dispute, it is likely to be found that the system let Mrs. Wolstenholme down. Also, advice from counsel was that you cannot say that there were no glitches. Did you still think that the issue of poor systems and inadequate levels of support argument was just a silly argument that it was being rolled out?
No, I was just advising Bill that I think we could see that one again.
And did you, at that stage, think that there might be something in that argument?
I can't say that I did, to be honest. I don't think I put too much into it.
I mean, the expression rolled out suggests that it's a line that's rolled out time and time again, but not something with substance in it. Is that a fair analysis of what's said there, or is that unfair?
No, again, I think that's your interpretation. All I'm saying is that it's quite possible that the issue of poor systems and inadequate levels of support could well be rolled out in future cases.
And did you have a view as to those who were rolling it out in cases?
When you say a view, do you mean that I have an opinion of the postmasters?
Absolutely. So did you have an opinion as to the type of person who rolled out that argument?
No, not at all. It's just an obvious thing to do. If a case has been won using that argument, then future cases could well use the same argument in order to try and secure a victory.
Can we look at FUJ 001211724, please? This is the document we looked at earlier, and I said I'd return to it. So we're now 20th of August, and it's to Colin Lenton-Smith and Bill Mitchell. And we've looked at the Shobnall Road issue, but let's look at Cleveley's now. It says, although Cleveley's may appear to be closed, it could be construed that Pole bought off Mrs. Wolstenholme rather than defend their system. Even if a gagging order is placed on the woman, she apparently has a gaggle of postmasters lined up to support her case and will be well aware of what the final outcome was. Do you think, looking at that now, that was an appropriate stance to have taken?
Well, the words may be unfortunate, but no, it's I think it's what to be expected, isn't it?
Reference to a gaggle of postmasters. Do you regret what appears to be effectively a demonisation of sub-postmasters in this regard?
Well, I think demonisation is a bit of a strong word. I could have said a collection of postmasters, a gaggle of postmasters. I don't know what the collective term is for them, but she apparently was going to circulate through a number of postmasters the outcome of the court case, and it was, I guess inevitably that they would use it to their benefit.
And what could possibly be wrong with sub-postmasters using success in a court case to their benefit?
Nothing.
So why the critical words? And why such an attempt to prevent that from happening?
Sorry, where was I attempting to stop that happening?
Well, the continued effort to defend and respond to Mr. Coyne's independent report over months may be said to be a continued effort to try and prevent a negative outcome that could be shared with a gaggle of postmasters. Do you agree with that?
No, I don't. No, I mean, the two things are separate. I mean, in refuting or in arguing against the Jason Coyne's report, that was one part of our support to the Post Office. That's been and gone now. This is after the event.
And do you not think that reference there shows concern on your part that Mrs. Wolstenholme would share what was a successful court case on her part with other sub-postmasters, and that would cause you some sort of problem in the future?
I don't think so. I mean, it just says what it says. Even if a gagging order is placed, because don't forget, as far as I was aware, talking to Mandy Talbot, she said that she would want to get a gagging order. So I'm saying I don't know what the outcome was, but even if it was in place, it's highly unlikely that it would stop her or stop others trying to find out what the outcome was and how that was achieved.
Even if a gagging order is placed on the woman, do you not think that the words used were derogatory at that time, showed a sense of frustration?
No.
Is there anything that you would like to raise with the chair before I finish?
Well, no, I did mention earlier about the fact that this was a unique situation that we found ourselves in, that I found myself in, and we were having to learn how to do this and to pick up how to do this as we went along. It was the first time I'd been involved with an expert witness as such. Paul had asked us to challenge the report, which we did. All right, perhaps we took the challenge one step too far by offering him site visits and what have you, but there comes a point when you want to see something reach a natural conclusion, and the offer to host him and let him have access to people and systems was probably the last toss of the die. The fact that Post Office didn't forward that report to him was their choice, and then we take the next step, which is going to court. As I said at the start, it's a job. We had a job of work to do, and we did that work.
Did you ever discover why Post Office decided against making the offer that you thought they should?
No, sir, I didn't.
All right, thank you.
At one level, it didn't seem important. They chose not to do it. It was their report. It was their work. If they don't want to do anything with it, then it's up to them. It's not up to us.
No, I follow that. I just wondered whether, because it was a specific suggestion that had been made, no doubt made by you, but having no doubt considered it with others, whether you would have liked to have known the reason why they didn't do it. But there we are.
Yeah, perhaps natural curiosity didn't get the better of me that time.
Fine. Okay.
So do you have any other questions? Otherwise, we have some on behalf of core participants.
No, they can fire away.
Thank you very much.
It's a bit of an unfortunate phrase.
Well, there we are. Even chairs of inquiries occasionally have to choose their words carefully. Mr. Holmes.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Mr. Holmes. I represent 157 sub-postmasters, and I have a couple of questions for you. Could we go to document FUJ 00121486, please? We'll just wait for it to come up on the screen. And if we scroll down to just before the paragraph beginning, the expert's opinion, so that's right. So the paragraph that begins on the 6th of February. So it says, on the 6th of February, POA received a copy of the expert's report with a request from POL for an early response. And then POL are concerned that the expert's opinion that the system was at fault might set a precedent against future POL prosecutions. Now, this is a draft response that you sent to Mr. Lenton Smith in February 2004 in relation to a letter that he'd received from Mr. Baines. Do you recall that?
Yeah, yes, I do.
And
Sorry.
and Mr. Blake,
Sorry, I'm looking to the side. I'm looking at my laptop to find some documents, which I think, or a daybook scan where that concern was raised in a conversation.
well, I'm going to ask you about that a bit later. Mr. Blake put the same point to you from another document, and you said that that was your understanding at the time. Is that right?
Yep.
And if we could now go to your witness statement at paragraph 10, and your statement is WITNO4600200.
Is this my third or second witness statement?
Now, I think it's your second witness statement. It's your second witness statement, yes.
Right. Let me just get there.
And
10. Yep.
Paragraph 10, please, which is on page, I've got page 76, but I think it's page 4 of 10.
Yes, that's correct. I've got it.
So we'll just scroll down to 10. So you say that you were exasperated with the Post Office and their handling of this issue, and their handling of the expert witness and their lack of communication. And then you say, Post Office Limited, specifically Jim Cruz and Mandy Talbot, had both verbally expressed concerns about precedent should the expert's report become common knowledge, and had asked for our assistance in challenging it. Now, what I want to ask you is, what did Jim Cruz and Mandy Talbot verbally express about precedent? You haven't said what it was that they said.
Well, that would have been in phone conversations. So I'm just looking at. Just bear with me a minute. Well, you've seen the daybook scan from the phone call with Mandy Talbot in June. No, I mean, these concerns would have been expressed in phone conversations and also in Keith Baines's letter. Obviously, I've got a record of Mandy Talbot's phone conversation, but not Jim's, where that concern was expressed. So, you know, my record keeping's not as good as it usually is.
Well, of course, this was a long time ago, but you say in your statement that they both verbally expressed concerns, and I really wanted to ask you whether you remember what it was that they said, what specific concerns they expressed about precedent.
Well, no, I suspect what I'm talking about there is the fact that if if the report, well, which it did, of course, if the report resulted in a positive outcome for the postmaster, then I think they were concerned that this issue of poor systems and poor support would be, as I said in another email, rolled out time and again by postmasters who were suffering the same sort of issue.
See, our clients' take on this evidence, and I suggest that this must be right, is that Post Office didn't want sub-postmasters to use this material in court because it might lead to them being acquitted. That's really what this is about, isn't it?
Well, I think that's what I've just said, but you've probably put it much better than I can.
Thank you very much. So our clients also say, and I wanted your comment on this, that really what the Post Office were doing was they were in 2004 trying to cover up evidence of defects in the Horizon system. Do you accept that?
I can't really answer to that one.
Right, well,
I don't know. I don't know what their motivation was to handling the case. I just know what we did to try and assist them in what they were asking us to do.
I'm just going to ask if I have any more questions to ask you. No, that's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mr. Maloney,
No,
and
no,
Mr. Henry.
I've just two things to ask you about, please, Mr. Holmes. Firstly, when you prepared your response to Mr. Coyne's report, or indeed your response to his reply, did you check pinnacles or kells relating to Cleveland's?
No.
You sure about that?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't get down to the technical level of looking at individual pinnacles, peaks, or kells.
Right.
Because the discussion was a slightly higher level of just, you know, the principle of whatever it was. I can't remember now, so far back.
Could we, just to clarify that, just have a look at WITN 046 00206. And this is the first page. This is Fujitsu Services Post Office account, response to the expert's reply to Fujitsu Services submission.
Yeah, so this is our second report.
Yeah. And under the Horizon System Help Desk, if we scroll down slightly to the second sub-paragraph, we can see that his statement that the HSH was not interested in getting to the bottom of the continual occurrence is flawed, given that one of the calls that he specifically referenced was closed using a known error log. The presence of a KEL clearly indicates that problems are investigated and workarounds provided, pending a permanent fix through a system upgrade. So does that in any way affect your answer that you didn't look at peaks or kells in relation to Cleveland's or pinnacles?
No. What I suspect may have happened there, and I can only surmise that was the case, is that I may well have had conversations with interested parties about the response that he'd made, and the question of HSH not interested in getting to the bottom of the continual occurrence was probably challenged by somebody I was talking to, and saying, well, no, that's not true, because we have KELs, which means we do look at the problem to try and come up with a quick solution for future use, pending an update or a reissue of software at a later release date.
The second issue concerns that, as it were, getting to the bottom of things and root cause analysis. And could we look at document POL 30-89802? This, as you can see, is an audit of customer service support processes, and we can see that the originator is yourself, Mr. Holmes.
Yep. Yes.
It's the 1st of November 2001. And if we could please go to paragraph 3.1 at page 3. Thank you very much. Which reads that the overall opinion formed is that the management of incidents, problems and complaints and alerts has reached a level of maturity where consistency is now the norm. But if we see that further down, there are a number of relatively minor issues that, while not impairing the current management of incidents and problems, could, if accepted and addressed, improve the performance of this part of customer service. They are, and then the at 2, introduce formal root cause analysis into problems and complaints management as a matter of course. This is already being addressed within customer service. And then, at page 7 of the document, we see 4.1.2, problem root cause analysis. CS/PRD/021 also introduces the concept of root cause analysis for problems, although again, no guidance or examples are provided. No evidence of completed root cause analyses could be identified, and it's recommended that RCA guidance is provided either in CS/PRD/021 or in a standalone procedure. So by November 2001, around the time of, just after even, the Cleveland's relevant events, there was sufficient concern to note that there had been no evidence of any RCAs completed for any problems addressed so far.
Well, yes, that's what's in the report, so that must have been what was found.
And you're the originator of this report, Mr. Holmes.
Yeah, yeah.
And was this not consistent with the analysis of Mr. Coyne?
Well, yes, I suppose it is. I mean, yeah.
And was that reflected in your response to the report of Mr. Coyne?
You can show me the response, but I guess what you're saying is that although we'd found this in an audit in 2001, it wasn't reflected back in our response to him. I suppose in my defence, there's an awful lot going on in different streams. So yes, this would have been found at the time of the audit, but it doesn't stick in the forefront of my mind when I'm looking at other things going on. Now that may sound like a poor excuse, I know, but that's the way it is.
Well, should we just look at your response, just to assist you, which is FUJ 00121504. And it's towards the bottom of page 1, if we could, please. Yeah, there we see, in terms of the help desk, the HSH represents the first line of support to postmasters. It operates under strict service level agreements, covering aspects such as pick-up time, first time fix and time to close. These measures are imposed by Post Office Limited and designed to ensure that PMs receive a quick response to their call and, to the extent possible over the phone, a timely return to normal business operations. Depending on the nature of the call, the HSH operator would work with the PM to solve the problem and return the outlet to normal operation as soon as possible, in line with the prevailing SLAs. If this could not be achieved, the call would be escalated up the support channel to second, third or fourth line, depending on the severity of, if we could just move on to the next page, the problem. Again, the primary objective is to return the outlet to normal operations as soon as possible, and rebooting the counter often meets that objective. Does not mean that the problem is closed at that point in time. A detailed scrutiny of overall problem management in the post office account would reveal, and then we see into transaction handling on reboot. Now, that's a fairly generic statement about the purpose of HSH, isn't it, Mr. Holmes?
Yes, it is, yeah. Yeah.
And did you take any steps to investigate whether there'd been any root cause analysis in respect of problems at Cleveley's?
No,
Why not?
because that wasn't really the objective of what I was trying to do with this response.
Did you have skin in the game here, as you said, Mr. Holmes?
Yeah, I'd been asked to do something, and I was doing it to, at that time, what I felt was the best of my ability. Of course, 21 years later, it's very easy to criticise and come back and say, well, you didn't do that very well, did you? And the answer is, no, I didn't. I can see that. And I could have done more. But at that time, I felt that was what was required.
Thank you, Mr. Holmes.
Good afternoon, Mr. Holmes. Edward Henry, representing a number of sub-postmasters, including Miss Tracy Felsted. Mr. Holmes, could I just ask you, and it's in relation to a question that you have been asked by my learned friend just now, could I ask you to go to FUJ 000 75674, please? And that, can you see that clearly, Mr. Holmes?
Yes, I can now, yeah.
You can. What does it say? It's a peak incident management system. So what does that mean?
Well, peak was a system where all incidents were logged.
And you were, you say, not involved at that level?
I was on this one because this was an issue that affected our ability to produce audit data request sort of thingy-bob, well, what's the word? SQL type query statements, because there was no attribute grammar catalogue available for the TMS journal. So we weren't able to look at a request coming in from outside and say, well, in order to satisfy that, we need to get this piece of information, this piece of information, that piece of information, and stick it together as a query type statement. So that was just identifying the absence of a piece of technical documentation.
Did this feature, this problem that you have just referred to, in the original report that you wrote with Mr. McDonnell?
No, I don't think it did. I don't think it did.
But would you agree that it would again be symptomatic of a financial accounting system that was unfit for purpose?
No. No, all this was just saying we didn't have any record descriptions that would allow us to search through the records to pull audit data off. Nothing to do with what the system itself was doing.
But it's very, very important, isn't it, in order to analyse root cause analysis of problems in the system, and also the recording and retention of data must be fundamental to a financial accounting system that works.
Well, I agree with you. And the TMS journals were there in the audit archive and were complete and valid and accurate. What we didn't have was the means to get into them to pull the information out that was required on request. That was all. I'm trying to think of a parallel.
Well, I suppose the parallel could be like, yeah, you've got all of the stuff like the hieroglyphs, but until you've got the Rosetta Stone, you don't know what the hieroglyphs are because you can't access them.
Absolutely right.
Yeah, right. So let's just go to the first entry there, the 1st of July. No ability to interrogate TMS journals is an integral element of the audit solution that we supply to POCL. The interrogations are achieved using our query and constructing SQL-type query statements. The structure of the TMS records is complex and uses attribute grammar to establish identities for the record attributes. There is currently no definitive catalogue of the attribute grammar used in the Horizon solution. Solution perhaps should have been put in inverted commas, which makes the construction of an R-query statement to meet a customer's business inquiry difficult, time-consuming, and very hit and miss. Were those your words?
Yes.
Hit and miss. And you are still in control of this issue in September 2001, are you not?
Yes.
Because we go to the 12th of September 2001 at 11:05. The call record has been assigned to the team member Jan Holmes, correct? So you're still in control of this in September 2001, correct?
Where does it say that?
Go to the 12th of September 2001, which is at page 3 of 4 in the internal numbering. $11:05.
Yeah, I can see it.
Yeah, and you're still in control of this 21st of June 2004?
Well, it's been passed back to me because I was the originator. So it's been sent back to me, and it says this has been identified as a requirement for network banking and has been included in the NWB performance improvement document. It has not been transferred to the SDS, but the Pinnacle remains open pending the delivery of such a catalogue as part of BI3. So what was happening there was that the production of this catalogue had been put in the back burner until a later release of Horizon was made.
But it's still, if we go to the last entry, but one, 21st of June 2004, there is an entry, this call record, or the call record, has been assigned to the team member Jan Holmes.
Yes, that's right.
21st of June.
Yeah, because on the 19th of January, there's a document in PVCS with a reference at version 0.4 that is an up-to-date attribute grammar catalogue. So, in other words, they had produced the document that was missing when the Pinnacle was first raised. So that was passed back to me as the originator to close it, which I did.
Right. But this was a serious problem, and it wasn't closed until 2004.
Why do you say it's a serious problem, Mr. Henry? The absence of a catalogue that describes the records for audit to build SQL queries was an inconvenience and a problem and a nuisance, but it wasn't a serious error.
There is currently no, you agreed with me, it was like the hieroglyphs before the discovery of the Rosetta Stone. There is currently no definitive catalogue of the attribute grammar used in the Horizon solution, which makes the construction of an R-query statement to meet a customer's business inquiry difficult, your words, difficult, time-consuming, and very hit and miss. That's a serious problem, Mr. Holmes.
In your opinion, possibly, but it was just one of a number of things that we were dealing with.
That's a serious problem, Mr. Holmes, even if it is one of a number of things you may be dealing with, because as you accepted on the last occasion you gave evidence before the inquiry, the Post Office was entirely dependent on Horizon data for its prosecution of sub-postmasters. You agreed with that?
Yes, that's right.
Yeah. Right. Okay.
So all the absence of the attribute grammar catalogue did was just made our life slightly more difficult when we were pulling the audit data. The audit data was there.
The audit data has to be picked out impartially, independently, comprehensively, and fully. It can't be picked out on a hit and miss basis. Surely
Exactly
you agree
that.
with that?
That's why the pinnacle was raised.
Yes. Right. Now, that is not closed until 2004, is it?
That's correct, yeah.
Right. Miss Felsted was convicted in 2002. So I now move on to her case. You were asked about this on the last occasion, and I was asking about Tracy Felsted when I was questioning you on the last occasion. Would you like to go to the transcript of that? Shall we go to it? It's inquiry INQ 401019. And can I just do a quick whistle-stop tour through this transcript? Could we go internal numbering, please, to 5 of 83, page 20 of the transcript, line 7. This is when Mr. Beer is questioning Mr. McDonnell. And it's page 20, and yes, thank you, line 7. This was about the EPOS system being the joke of the building. And then he said, yes, I think everybody knew, specifically the test team, who, when I spoke to those guys, they would make it very clear that the quality of the code that was being delivered was such a bad, poor level, they're wasting their time testing it because they knew that it was just broken. They were going to end up raising lots of pinnacles from it, so they give a very frank and very honest opinion about the ability of some of the guys, not all of them. Some of them were good in the team and the quality of the product the team was producing. Standing joke in the building. Mr. Beer said, you say in your statement it was known up at the highest level, including Fujitsu Japan, because they sent over 3 coders to perform an audit, and Mr. McDonnell confirms that, but he can't remember what date that actually was. Could we go to page 31, please? And at page 31, I'm sorry, I don't see the numbering on this. I'm so sorry, I was meaning page 31 of the actual transcript. It's internal page 8. That's entirely my fault. Internal page 8 of 83. Thank you. So is that page 8 of 83? Thank you so much. Page 31, line 1 to 25. And this is, he says there was a concern considered to be the greater of the two concerns which related to the impact of continual changes to existing code to fix problems and or to insert new functionality into the code. Do you agree with Mr. Holmes that that was a concern? Because he was being taken to your concerns, Mr. Holmes. And the answer was, I do. And in fact, within the document, there's a very good example of that during the task force, which was supposed to be all about getting the quality under control. They took away some of the resource to force in extra functionality for, I think it was balancing and something else. There's 3 parts to it. It's referred to in the document somewhere, but it was a sizable piece of development work which was being developed on the fly and shoehorned into the code, right into the middle of the task force initiative, where we were trying to stabilize the product. And that's a typical example of not understanding the problem of where we were at the time and continuing with the same bad behavior, in my view. Those 2 concerns that Mr. Holmes mentions and which you agree with in your view, would they have had any impact on the integrity of the system, how it operated or how it was operated by sub-postmasters? Yes, it would. It would result in functional errors, bugs, spurious behavior, internal forgive me, I just go to the top of page 32. Was that the view held by you and others at ICL Pathway at the time? Yes, it was. I think it was belief that was pervasive throughout the building. And of course, Mr. Holmes, you being the co-author of the report, it would have been a view that you trenchantly shared together with your co-author, wouldn't it?
I would have shared it with him, yes.
Trenchantly, I'm sure. You're not backward in coming forward, Mr. Holmes. You're the co-author of that report.
Well, all right, if you want to use that term, feel free.
Well, Mr. Holmes, it's not a secret that when you wish to express an opinion, you express an opinion with a certain degree of confidence and, shall we say, vigour.
Yeah, but trenchantly is not a term that I would normally use. That's all.
I see. Confidence there. Unequivocal in your view.
I agreed with the report. It was a joint report, so I was, happy to concur with him.
Yes. Page 11, internal, please.
So I'm sorry to interrupt, Mr. Henry. In terms of timing, I just want to make sure, because we're certainly not going to use up this afternoon's session. The question is whether we take a short break now before, or at some appropriate point before Mr. Henry continues, or whether Mr. Henry considers he will be finished shortly. If not, there's no problem with that.
Mr. Brigg, I was beginning to wonder. I'm not really keen, Mr. Henry, on going back to the points that you're focusing on at the moment, unless they are really laying the ground for some important point in relation to this morning's evidence.
Well, they are, sir, but I can take them a lot more. I can take them a lot more quickly, because
I would prefer to complete the evidence without a further break, if I can put it in that way, and I think we ought to be able to do it.
So be it, sir.
Okay, well, hang on. Sorry, can I say something? I would like a break.
Do you mean a short break or what?
Yeah, no, it's just a natural break. Just a natural break to go to the loo. That's all.
Of course, you must have that. Right. Well,
Thank you.
Well, sir, could we have a break now then, sir, to accommodate Mr. Holmes, perhaps?
Yes, we will break off for what I will call a loo break. Will bring us back at 1 o'clock.
Oh, sir, could I ask for a little bit more time than that? Just a little bit more, because I did have some material, and in response to your request for, as it were, speeding things along, I would just like to have a little bit more time to make things more concise.
Right. Well, what I'm going to do is say this. We are going to break until 1:10.
Thank you, sir.
But then the questioning will cease no later than 1:30.
So be it, sir.
Right.
Okay. Thank you, sir. We can see you. Can you see and hear us?
Yes, I can. Thank you.
Yes.
May I begin, sir?
Of course, yes.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Holmes, the report that you co-authored with Mr. McDonnell, I asked you on a previous occasion why you retrieved it on the 14th of May, 2001. Do you recall me asking you that question?
Yes, I believe you did, yes.
Sorry, sir, I can't hear you.
Well, I'm unmuted. Yeah, I think you did.
I'm afraid we've lost the sound.
Oh, I am unmuted.
I can hear Mr. Holmes, so it's a problem in the hall by the sound of it.
Yes.
He might be able to hear now.
Can you hear me now?
Oh, I can hear you now, Mr. Holmes.
Okay.
Thank you. Did you give an answer because we didn't hear it?
I gave an answer to the question you just asked, which was yes, I do recall you asking the question in November.
Yeah. And your answer was that it was a sort of an administrative catch-up.
To the best of my memory, yes.
Yes. Now, can I just ask you, please, at the time, had you been asked to assist in the prosecution of Miss Tracy Felstead, to the best of your knowledge and belief?
No. What was the name of the outlet that she was associated with?
Camberwell Green.
Right. Now, I do believe I did a witness statement for Camberwell Green, but with no knowledge of who was involved.
You certainly did make a witness statement for Camberwell Green, and I'm sure that's right, because you do not mention Miss Felstead's name. You were asked to consider data between the 12th of October 2000 and the 1st of March 2001.
When you say consider, do you mean review it, analyse it, or extract it?
Shall we go to your witness statement? I think
let's do that.
Probably be the best thing to do.
I can't get my hands on it immediately here.
Don't worry, because we can have it put up on the screen. It's WITN 046 00217. And I wonder if you could load that up. Now, you, sir, are not a technical person. You have said that on more than one occasion.
Yep.
Right. And this is not signed, but you have mentioned that you were asked to make a witness statement. Did you eventually sign a witness statement?
I don't know.
I suppose that would be the natural presumption of going to the trouble of writing a draft witness statement. A draft witness statement, of course, which has been amended, as we can see.
Well, I was going to say, this is still in draft form, isn't it?
Yes. I mean, were you in the habit, as you were, for example, in the Cleveley's case, of making witness statements?
I made a few over the years, yes.
In fact, I think in some of the documents that you very kindly produced, you were remarking about the fact that you were being asked to make a few about various locations at one point, and that, not your exact words, that it was a bit of an imposition. Do you recall?
Well, they take time to produce, but it's part and parcel of the job, isn't it?
It is. You presumably read the declaration that it was going to be, once signed, true to the best of your knowledge and belief, and that you would make it knowing that if it were to be tendered in evidence, you should be liable to prosecution if you'd willfully stated in it anything which you knew to be false or did not believe to be true. So obviously you realised it was a matter of some solemnity and importance.
Yeah, I'm just concerned that I don't have a final copy of this, in the sense that all I've got is the copy that you've got, which is in a draft form, and I can't, unless I can see one that I've signed. I don't know what to say.
Well, I'm not going to be asking you about any of the bits that have been amended. So all I'm going to be asking you about is your direct knowledge of the contents of this statement.
Okay.
Now,
Before we go any further, Mr. Henry, will we be able to establish today whether or not Mr. Holmes actually made a signed witness statement?
I'm afraid, given the effluxion of time, sir, unless there's something that I have not yet detected, I'm afraid I can't answer that question.
So, I mean, obviously I will defer to your view as to whether you pursue this at the moment, but I'm not quite sure what I will get in terms of my investigation from an examination of a draft which may never have become more than a draft, if I can put it that way.
Could I go to some subsidiary documents then, if I may? Could we go? We'll come back to this, but I want to be quite fair to you, Mr. Holmes. Could we go to WITN 04600216? And this is a pathway change control note, a CCN sheet. It's a document that you produced, Mr. Holmes. It came from your garage or wherever you were keeping these documents. The date is the 10th of January 2002, and it was again under the umbrella of the Camberwell Green post office case. Could we go, please, to page 4 of 5? Do you remember on the last occasion, Mr. Holmes, and I can give the precise reference if you would wish to go to it, but let me ask the question first, that I put to you that at Ms. Felsted's trial, a request had been made by ICL Fujitsu for £20,000 for unused material. And do you see the figure there?
Yes, I do.
It's remarkably similar, isn't it, to the £20,000 in relation to a Camberwell Green case. Do you agree?
Well, yeah, the numbers are roughly the same, but I have no knowledge of this at all.
But these are your documents that you produced to the inquiry. You obviously kept them for a reason.
I didn't produce the CCN. That's not my document that I'm looking at now.
Right, I'm very sorry. I thought these were documents that were actually produced by you as a result of being requested to produce them by the inquiry. But
can you scroll this one on the screen up to the top and let's have a look at what it is? Right, this is a change control note which is raised by us in response to a change request that is raised by the post office, which we then raise a change proposal that effectively establishes the work within post office account. And the CCN is the change control note that goes back to the post office to say, this is what we're going to do, and this is how much it's going to cost. I have nothing to do with that. In fact, you can see the CCN was raised by Graham Hooper, who was a security manager at that time.
I see. But nevertheless, in relation to Camberwell Green, because this is what we understand, and that's the description of the document as to its provenance, in relation to the Camberwell Green case, it's remarkably close, is it not, to the £20,000 that I put to you on the last occasion?
Yeah, but you can't expect me to comment on something that I had no part in the production of.
I see.
Yet the numbers are nearly the same.
No.
But so what?
Could I just, again, I appreciate that you do not refer to Ms. Felsted by name in your witness statement, but could we go back to that draft witness statement, please? And that's WITN 046000217. And again, just the introduction. You've been employed by ICL Pathway for 5 years, employed as the Quality and Audit Manager responsible for quality and audit management and the user authority for the audit solution from where audit data is sourced. I have working knowledge of the computer system known as Horizon, which is the computer system supplied by ICL Pathway Limited and used by Post Office Limited in post office outlets. I'm authorised by ICL Pathway Limited to undertake extractions and analyses of audit data held on the Horizon system. Is all of that completely accurate?
Yes.
Yeah. Could we go to, please, if we may, to the conclusion of the witness statement, please, or page 4 of 5. Forgive me, page 4 of 5. Could I ask you, please, to scroll down? I do apologise. You're dealing here with Horizon System help desk calls, Tivoli event logs, non-polling reports. So far as you are aware, was this information that was being supplied to you, you not being a technical person, that this was information being supplied to you by somebody else?
I don't know, or these might have been audit data that we'd extracted and then had a look at. So I can't tell you if the Horizon System help desk calls data, the 21 calls, were extracted from the audit solution and then I looked at it, or whether it was given to me by somebody else.
I mean, obviously, a witness statement in a civil case can often be an amalgam of information that is relayed to one by other people, and that it is sometimes even constructed by the solicitor on behalf of the witness. But this was a statement that was intended for submission in a criminal case. Do you follow?
Actually, yeah, if you go back to the previous page.
Yes.
I'm putting my hand up there and saying on various dates and at various times between the 14th of January and 25th of January, I analysed audit data for transactions and activities undertaken by Camberwell Green Post Office during the period 12th October 2000 to 1st of March 2001, the material period.
Yes.
And I have to assume that what follows, Horizon System Help Desk, Tivoli event logs, non-polling reports, were pulled from the audit archive. I mean, I can't remember 21 years on.
Of course. So in other words, you were, although not a technical person, you were analysing the data. Was there anybody there to assist you, given the fact that you weren't a technical person, in making an assessment of the data?
I can't remember whether there was or not, to be honest with you.
I see. And then could we go to the next page, please? And the conclusion.
Can I just stop you there, Mr.
Of course,
Henry?
of course.
I'm looking at a version of this document, which is version 1, which has the changes in the same way that you've got on yours, but I've also got another. Oh, I must be imagining it. I thought there was something there about time. No, right, forget it. Sorry, beg your pardon.
Don't worry. Don't worry, Mr. Holmes. Your conclusion: there are no reasonable grounds for believing that the information stored on the Horizon system would be inaccurate because of improper use of computer terminal during the material time the Horizon system was operating properly at the Camberwell Green Post Office outlet, or if not, any respect in which it was not operating properly or was out of operation was not such as to affect the production of audit records or the accuracy of their contents.
Mm-hmm.
Now, sir, are those your words, or were they effectively a rubric that you had been provided with?
I can't recall. I cannot recall.
Do you think they fairly reflect the knowledge, your personal knowledge, that Learned Counsel to the Inquiry was exploring with you this morning about bugs, errors, and defects which were apparent at this time?
Sorry, can you repeat that?
Do you think that this fairly reflects the knowledge, your personal knowledge, of bugs, errors, and defects that were apparent at this time?
Well, I guess it must do, because those did exist at that time. We all know that now. We didn't necessarily know it at the time.
Well, you were aware, were you not, of difficulties in retrieving data and difficulties with, as it were, obtaining the information that was required for these prosecutions, correct?
Yeah, but that wasn't because the data didn't exist or it was invalid or corrupt. It was because we didn't have an attribute grammar catalogue to help us build the SQL statements.
You were aware of balancing errors that had been drawn to your attention at the time.
If you say so.
You were aware that the EPOS code was of poor quality, unstable, and vulnerable to code decay. You were aware of all these things.
I accept that one, yeah.
Yeah. So again, I ask you, do you think that this is a fair reflection of that which was known at that stage by you, but also Fujitsu?
Yes, I do.
I suggest to you, Mr. Holmes, that that can't be right.
Well, all right, fine. If you believe that to be incorrect, perhaps you can enlighten me as to how you arrive at that.
Well, hang on now, hang on. First of all, it's 1:30, and secondly, this session was supposed to be about Cleveley's and the relevance, and the evidence relating to Cleveley's. We are now going off on a completely different tangent in circumstances about which I am uncomfortable when it is not even known whether or not an actual witness statement was made.
So be it, sir. The reason why I have been asking this is because it appears to be in lockstep with Cleveley's in, as it were, a defence of the Horizon system. And Miss Felsted was suspended in February 2001. So
I understand how it could be extremely relevant to Ms. Felsted's case, but not to Cleveley's case. And I want to be clear in my mind as to where we are day by day, so to speak.
I see, sir. I'm very, very grateful to counsel to the inquiry who understood from our representations that we were trying to, as it were, draw a parallel with Cleveland's in that this being a defence of the Horizon system at or about the same time. But that is my
yeah.
apology in its old-fashioned sense to the inquiry.
That's fine. That's fine. And if there comes a point in time when there is reasonable grounds to suspect, I think I'd put it as low as that a witness statement was made in Ms. Felsted's case, I'm not saying I won't return to that paragraph, Mr. Henry, but not at the moment.
So be it, sir. Mr. Holmes, thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Holmes, for giving evidence for a second time and for giving, in total now, 3 witness statements to the inquiry. That concludes the inquiry's business for today. We're now going to embark upon a vacation period where no doubt many of the people involved in the inquiry, if not all of them, will be taking a well-earned break. I wish everyone a good holiday if they're having one. And I will see you all on the 5th of September. Thank you.
Thank you, Sir Wynne.